Okay, so we're going to get started today with exercise 228, the second to last exercise of the semester. I know that it starts to get a little chaotic, so as you're working on your work today, if you don't end up doing a section and giving me a section at the end of the day, that's okay. Just give me something at the end of the day. So whatever you're working on is what you're going to turn in. But I'm going to go through sections. I'm going to walk you through how to cut, to create a line drawing section from Rhino, which is certainly a goal as part of your assignment. Though you don't technically have to have the section, you could have the plan and the elevation from the last two classes instead of the section, because it's two of those three. 1 week from today is the end of everything. So on Monday, you guys are going to come in. You're going to give me 11 by 17 prints of all 6 of the images that you create. There will be 2 of the Illustrator line drawings and 4 renderings. Remember, day, night, interior, exterior gets us to 4. If you do more than that and or print more than that, that's okay with me. I will grade the online submissions, not the print versions, but I like to make a book of all the renderings each semester. So I have groups of all the renderings. That's why I ask you to print them. Lets everybody else look through your renderings too in a physical format. On Monday, you guys will come in, you'll turn that stuff in. There will be donuts, because there's always donuts on the last day. And then you guys will get a survey to fill out. It helps me kind of tailor the class. You'll tell me what worked, what didn't work, what I could make better, if you have suggestions for different assignments and all that kind of stuff. Believe it or not, it helps a huge amount as I tailor the class each semester for the next semester if I get feedback from you. So I will ask you guys to do that as well on Monday. Because of the 16-week semester, technically we're supposed to hold class on Wednesday, which means that you guys have to come in here, show up, and tell me that you're here. I'll check you off, and then you can go work and study on whatever finals, other projects you want to work on. But I will be here. Technically, we have class, and technically you're responsible for coming in and checking in with me right in the beginning of class, and then you can go do whatever it is that you want to go do. I did that and had everything due on Monday, so that you don't have to stress out about it later in the week of finals week. So I'm trying to get it over with for you. Hopefully it'll be a little bit better this semester because we're doing it that way. So we'll see. It's a little bit of an experiment, but that's what we're going to do. That means everything's due on Monday. You'll turn in your final. Any regrades, any exercises, all the comments, everything's done on Monday. So I want everything done on Monday. The only thing that's outstanding is that you come and check in. So there's one checkbox at that point, but other than that, everything's turned in and done for the semester. I'm actually going to do the grading on Monday afternoon. So other than that last checkbox, I should have your final grades done on Wednesday, and I'll submit those on Wednesday. So that's the plan going forward. Today, we're going to work on a line drawing section from Rhino. And so I've done this, obviously, with the elevation. I did it with the plan last class. The plan is almost the same thing as the section. It's just the orientation. That's the only big difference in our two views. And really, the section is one of the more valuable drawings that you can do in the first place. And a large part of the section is choosing where in your building you want to cut the section, because there are better places and there are worse places to cut the section. And you just want to make sure that you're thinking about, well, how does this section really show off your building in the best possible manner? So I went ahead and I opened up my building file again. This is the master site file. I'm going to go ahead and do a save as, because the process of cutting the section is going to be destructive, and I want to make sure that this is a separate version here. So I will call this section 01. There we go. And that way, when I start to destroy pieces of my model, it's not the end of the world. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to establish the section plane, which is just a really large plane that intersects the whole drawing. I'll start over here in the standard, and let me go in and create a large vertical plane. I'm going to cut my section so that it goes through the stairs in my building, which is always a nice place to cut your section. Let me move this over a little bit. I may find that it's easier to move it in the top view to see where this section cut needs to be. Once I get close, I'll zoom in here a little bit and fine-tune it. Like I said, I'm going to cut directly through the stairs because that seems like a really nice place to cut through the building. I could cut on either side of these. And actually, to make it a little bit different, I will look the opposite direction that I usually look. So we'll be looking out this direction. So I'm going to cut toward the back edge here. So I have that section plane established. I want to make sure that it does intersect the whole model. So I need to move it down vertically just a little bit to make sure that it completely intersects. This particular version, I'm using the Tahoe terrain, and I've turned off all of that big terrain piece. The block is turned off because I don't need that for this particular section. I'm zoomed in way too close, and we're not going to worry about it too much. So I've established my section plane. Let's go ahead and give myself a little bit of organization here. I'll create a layer called section, and then below that I'll create a sublayer for section plane. And I will take that section plane and move it onto the section plane layer. Change object layer. Make this a little bit bigger here. And while I'm here, I probably should go ahead and load up my V-Ray toolbars. Let me go to Tools, Toolbar Layout. I'll go to File and then Open. On my flash drive in the Resources folder, I have the V-Ray toolbar. There it is. And I'll go ahead and turn on my object snaps for end, mid, and perpendicular because I was missing those. Probably end up using center a little bit later as well. OK, so I have my section plane. And just like we did when we were cutting the section before, I'm going to use that section tools command so that I can preview what this is going to look like. And so this time I'm going to look the opposite direction. I'm going to slice through the building over here. Let me actually select the building and zoom selected so that I can orbit around the building. I'm going to slice the building and look that way at the building. So with that established here, I'm going to go ahead and type ctcreate. Alternatively, I could go to Section Tools and then choose Create. So I want to create a section. Select the objects to section. It's going to be all. I'll press Enter. But then I'm going to hold down the Control key and deselect that big plane because I don't need to section that plane. I'll go ahead and press Enter when I'm done. And right here in direction, I'm going to look down at my little axes here. It is going to be in the x-axis. And then let's see, the rest of these are all OK. Solid mode should be set to surfaces. Good. And I'll go ahead and press Enter. When I do that, I get my little section icon here. I want to be going the opposite direction, so I'll type F for flip. So it's pointed in that direction. And then I'll snap to either the center of my plane, which is fine, or at the top of my plane, etc., just so that I'm pointing in the correct direction. When I'm done, I'll go ahead and press Enter, and it creates that first section. Let me turn off the section plane, and then we can view the section or preview the section by going to Section Tools, View. And it's available in this list. It's ST00. And I want to view it in the Interior Render 2 viewport, because that's what I'm in right now. So I'll type Interior Render 02. And there it is. Now I can take a look at this. So let me zoom in on the block. Zoom selected. And there it is. We could see that it was able to cut through rather nicely. I need to worry about what I'm filling in. So I'll create another new layer. I'll call that Section Fill. Go ahead and make it a sublayer of the section layer. There it is. I'll make it current. And then I need to go through and I need to fill in the parts that I've cut through. So I'll use the rectangular plane 3 points. That always seems easiest to me as I create it. There's my first plane. Second plane. It might be easier to view this in regular shaded mode rather than in ghosted mode. Oops, that was bad. I'm going to turn off my center snap because it's not helping. And so bear with me, this always takes a little bit of time, but it is necessary for creating the final rendering. All right, looks like I filled it in. The good news is the section tools filled in all of the stairs that I cut through, so I don't really have to worry about those pieces as well. Oh, looks like I got a little piece of roof up here that needs to be filled in. And another little piece right at the top there. All right, so I've got all of those filled in. That's good. That's going to be very helpful down the road for my clay rendering, but it's not quite necessary just yet. I'm going to also offset the curve that goes along right along the edge here so that I can create some ground below my model here. I'm going to unlock the ST00 layer so I can actually select this curve. I'm going to copy it, V for vertical, and we'll go down maybe 100 feet. Oh, it doesn't want to do it for me. We'll just put it there. That's good. I'll take this piece and V for vertical again, and we'll move it down. And then I could take this, and I can loft those. And I could take this piece, and I can loft those. And then I should add a few rectangles just to finish filling this all in. We'll drop this down. And one more little piece there, like that. I'm just filling that in so that it gives me a nice edge as part of this rendering. Okay, so I have that ready to go. Now it's time to set up the actual view so that I can do a make 2D of this particular view. So we'll go ahead and I'm going to switch my view. So I'll go to Set View, and I forget whether this is the front, back, right, or left. We'll try a few. It's not the back. Let's try the front. Let's go to Set View, and let me go to Front. There it is. I'm going to position my section so that it's set up, so that I'm seeing my section here. And I'm going to save this view. Remember, it's important that we save this view. I'm going to go to Set View and Named Views, and I will call this one, I'll do a Save As. This is going to be the section 00. And I'll go ahead and say OK. That saves section 00 as my view. It will also allow me to establish the viewport rectangle. So I'm going to go to the little triangle here, go to Set Camera, Show Camera. Remember, I'm not going to see it in this view, but I am going to see it in my other views. So here's Perspective View, and there's my camera points. Let me switch this into wireframe mode, and there it is. I'm still on the section Fill layer, and I will go ahead and draw a rectangle with 3 points. It's not a surface, it's a rectangle. And I'm going to turn on my point snap and turn off the other snaps so that I can hit just the points of the camera. There's 1, 2, and finding the third one in this mess can be a bit of a challenge. There it is right there. So there is my viewport rectangle, but it's only a quarter of what I need. I'm going to scale it, so I'll type Scale from the upper corner here by 2. and now it's the full size of my rectangle. If I were to double click out of the perspective view, we could see in the section 00 view, it's just showing along the edges there, which is what I want it to be. So at this point, it's time to do the Make 2D of this particular scene. If you're having trouble with the Make 2D, you might explode the blocks first. Alternatively, you might turn off some of the more complicated blocks, like the chairs or furniture or whatever. So I'm going to go ahead with section 00 showing here. I'm going to type Make 2D. And it's going to be of the current view. I'm going to go ahead and show my hidden lines and maintain my source layers. And I'll go ahead and say OK. And this is going to create my Make 2D. When it's done creating, I should be able to see it in the top view. Let me zoom selected. Sorry, I didn't select everything when I did the Make 2D. Let me jump back. Section 00 here. Make 2D. All, there we go, and I'll go ahead and press enter. Current view, all the rest of these options are the same as the last one, and now it'll take a little longer. I thought it went too fast. So let me let this go for a little bit. You guys can work. I'll bring you back, and once it's done doing its Make 2D, it can take 2 to 5 minutes or so. Looks like it actually went pretty fast, so let me, in the top view here, let me do zoom selected. There it is. Remember, there's always lots of extra lines that I don't need. The part that I care about is what showed up inside of that rectangle. So let's use that rectangle and this rectangle as trims. I'll type trim, and I'll get rid of the stuff that is outside of it. So we'll get rid of all of that. We'll get rid of all of that. There's always going to be a little bit of cleanup to do as well. I can then take everything that's inside this rectangle. I'll move it so that this corner here, let me turn back on my endpoint snap, is at 0, 0, 0. Z followed by S for selected, enter. And now I'm back at 0, 0, 0. There's my drawing, and I can now export for Illustrator. I'll go to File, and then Export Selected. We're going to change this type to be Adobe Illustrator, and I will save it to my flash drive for today. And under Options, I'm going to preserve my model scale. It should be 48 inches equals 1 inch. That's for quarter inch equals a foot scale. I can go ahead and say OK after that. And then I can go ahead and click on Save, which is going to save my line drawing for Illustrator. Let's go take a look at that in Illustrator just to see what it looks like. I'll double click on Adobe Illustrator to open it up. And then once it's open, I'll go to File and then Open. And I will choose that Illustrator file. There it is. I'll press Control- to zoom out. Let's get rid of the splash screen here. And we can see there it is. I do still need to adjust the artboard, so I'll click on the artboard tool. And I will adjust the artboard so that it snaps to those edges. And there it is. And now my artboard matches my line drawing. And so these are all live lines, and I can start to work with line weights. I'm not going to do that quite yet. I'll come back and do that. I'm going to move over into the clay rendering first, and then I'll come back to this particular view. So we'll leave this one open. And I'll jump back into Rhino. And now I want to make a clay rendering of this particular view. Now the problem is that V-Ray still doesn't recognize the section tools. So I need to go through and do that split and then assign the cThru material to perform this particular rendering. So I'm going to leave section 00 open here, but I'm going to work in the perspective view instead. So let's go ahead and make sure that my big section plane is turned back on. There it is. I'll change my view mode into shaded so that I can see it. And now it's time to start exploding blocks. So again, this is a destructive process. I'm going to type SEL block instance. and then I'll type explode. I'll hit escape twice to deselect everything, and then type SEL block instance again, and then explode. Hit escape twice so that everything's deselected. SEL block instance, explode. Escape twice, SEL block instance. No more blocks, so no objects were added to the selection. Everything's been exploded. That's good. So now that everything's been exploded, it's time to go ahead and do the big split. So I'm going to type in split. Select objects to split. It's going to be all. Again, I'm going to hold down Control and deselect that big plane. So I have everything selected but that big plane. And we'll go ahead and hit Enter. Then it's going to ask me for the cutting objects. That's where that big plane comes in. And I'll select that big plane. When it's done, I'll hit Enter. And it'll go ahead and start running through the big split. OK, so it just finished its big split. That's good. Now it's time to start assigning the materials. And so all of the objects that are on this side of my view need to be turned into the cThru material for the rendering purposes. So I'm going to go back into one of my side views. It's either going to be my right view or my left view. Let me go to Set View, and let's try the right view first. And yeah. Let me actually do it from the left. I think it'll be a little easier to make my selection from the left. So I'll switch to the left view. The reason that that's a little bit easier is because I can select from right to left, and everything that this touches will be my what I need to turn into the cThru material. And let me deselect. I'm going to hold down Control here. And there we go. Perfect. So I've got everything on this half, but I need to go through and make sure that I don't have any of the glass layers turned on here. So let me go through and find my glass. There's one. There's two. Oops, sorry, wrong button. All right, I think, oh, one more here. There we go. I think I got all of my glass. OK, so I've got all my glass deselected. Now I can go ahead and apply that cThru material to this. I'll go into my V-Ray material library. I'll right-click on Scene Materials. I'll go to Load Material. I already have this on my flash drive. If you didn't, you could follow the tutorial to create it yourself, or you can download it from the course website. It's under the Special Materials selection. I'll go into Resources, V-Ray, V-Ray Materials, Special Materials, cThru, and there it is. I'll open it. So this cThru material isn't a material that can exist in real life. It's transparent to the eye, but opaque to sunlight. And I'll right-click on it and say Apply Material to Selection. That'll make the cThru material on everything that is currently selected. That's good. So now that I have that applied, I'm going to go through and reselect all of the glass. So I'll go through and look at the objects that I turned off, and I'll say Select Objects on each of those layers as I come down. So when I turn the object back on, I'll right-click and say Select Objects. I'll right-click and say Select Objects. I'll right-click and say Select Objects. and I'll right click and say select objects. Now in this scenario, I need to deselect everything that is on the side of my rendering that the glass is normal. So we're going to deselect everything to right there. But everything on this side of the section needs to be turned into just a transparent material. I'll click on my V-Ray material editor and I'll create a new simple transparent material. I'll click and say create material standard. And this material is going to have white for transparency. And I can preview it. Yes, it's fully transparent. I can also call it transparent. I will then right click on the transparent material and say apply material to selection. So all of that glass becomes the transparent material. There it is. I'll deselect now, and now I need to assign the clay material to the other half of this model. So I'll go ahead and I will switch my view. I'll go to set view, and I'm going to switch from the left to the right to make my selection a little bit easier, which will allow me to select from right to left. I can select everything here. With everything selected, I can go ahead and I can apply that clay material to it. But before I do that, I need to again turn off all the glass. So I'll jump back up here and turn off anywhere where there is some glass. There we go. That should be all of the glass deselected. I'll go into my V-Ray material editor, and I need to create a material that is just clay. I'll right click and say create material standard, and I'm going to choose kind of a light gray for this, and I'll say OK, and I'll rename this to be clay. And if we preview it, yes, it looks kind of like a clay material here. I'll right click on clay and say apply material to selection. That will apply it to everything that I have selected here. I do need to go through, the glass can stay the glass. I'm OK with that staying as glass. But I want to turn them back on like that, and like that. So the glass is back on. And then I also need to find that section layer with my section fill. So hold on a second. There's my section fill. I want to select all of these objects. So let me say select objects. And I should also select these objects. So I have all of those section fills selected. And I can then apply the clay rendering to those as well. So let me apply material to selection. Perfect. That just fills in all of the selections. At this point, I'm ready to move back into my section 00 layer. Right there. This is where I can actually perform my rendering. I do need to turn off that big section plane. But now I'm ready to go ahead and perform the clay render. Let's take a quick look. I'll go into my V-Ray options. I'm going to go into output, and I'll unlock and make sure that I get the current view aspect ratio. There it is. I'll lock it again. And then under width and height here, I'm going to start really small. I'll do it at 100. And then we'll perform a rendering and make sure that it's actually turning out the way that it should. All right, looks like it turned out pretty well. I'm a little bit confused as to why the terrain in the back of this view is not clay rendered as well. Go to my V-Ray options, or my V-Ray materials, and make sure that clay is applied to that. And let's double check it again. It may be just the background of the HDRI that's showing. That's another option. So I may end up just cutting that off when I move it into Illustrator. So the quality of it looks OK. I'm going to go ahead and render it at a higher resolution. I'll go to my V-Ray options here, And you know what? I'm going to go into environment and see if I can solve that problem right now. In the reflection background, I'm going to take away the text bitmap, and then I will assign just plain white to the background. And let's see if that solves the problem. Yeah, there we go. Much better. So I got rid of that background HDRI. Now I'm seeing it just as gray. That works for me. Perfect. So at this point, I need to do a higher quality rendering. I'll bump up the rendering. The proportions stay the same, and I can go ahead and render this in the background. While that's rendering, I'm going to jump over into my Illustrator file and start prepping over here. So just as what happened last time, I chose to keep all of my layers when I did the Make 2D. I need to organize this into both hidden and visible layers. So I'll create a new layer for hidden, and I'll create a new layer for visible. And then I will go through and I'll select all of the visible layers. I'm holding down Control while I do this. Go ahead and move those up onto the visible layer. There we go. All those are hidden. Missed a few visibles here. And again, this part is optional. You could just dump it all onto one hidden layer and one visible layer. I just find it a little bit easier to have finer control as I start to make this. The rest of these are all hidden. So I'll hold down Shift, except for that one, put those on the hidden layer. And there's that last visible one. There it is as well. So let's turn off all the hidden layers for now, and I'll work with just the visible layers. This is where we need to do some cleanup. So we can see some of these lines don't really belong. I can get rid of that line. I can get rid of that line. I can get rid of this line here. I can get rid of that line there. So that one intersects, so that's going to be a little bit challenging. It looks like I'm missing part of the bottom of the pool. So there's always little bits that are going to need to be adjusted here. I can also, on any one of these, like say this purple one, I can go to the Select menu and say Select Same Stroke Color. That's going to select all of those parts. And I could then go to Properties, and I could say that instead of being purple, I wanted them to be black, which of course isn't available there. Let me change it over here. There we go. Those are all black now, and I want their weight to be a little bit thicker because they tend to be the outer part. The inner ones, these red ones, I could go in and say Select Same Stroke Color. That would select all of the red. We could change those to be black as well. And we'll make those 0.75. And now all of those have been changed. So there's always little bits of touch-up. Looks like the chair really didn't come through too nicely, so we'll go ahead and just delete the chair. I'm not going to worry about that too much. Sometimes there's little bits of detail like these art. We don't need those to be so strong. I'll come in here and change it to maybe 0.1 so they're nice and thin. That might have made it disappear for you guys altogether, so maybe 0.2. See if you can see it a little bit better. No, you can't. Not quite sure what that. Sometimes you have to zoom in here. Just in how it was made. If I want to take this line and make it match that line, I select the line and I can click on the eyedropper tool, which is right here, and say match it to that line, and it will adjust there as well. So there's always some fine-tuning control that needs to happen. You know, like these glass railings probably need to go down to maybe 0.5. So they become a little thinner. Those guys, same thing, 0.5. Control minus or Control 0 to zoom out. And so as you start to work through it, you're going to see that the line weights will start to show up. There's a few little issues that need to be addressed for me as well, like I'm missing part of the upper railing here and what have you. So I can go through and I can make those corrections, but I don't need you to sit and watch me make all of those corrections. But by now, my clay render should have finished. So there's my sectional clay render. Remember, because of how I created it, I'm getting the full shadows of how the sun is coming into the space, which is the big advantage here. With that selected, I can go ahead and save all of my channels. So I'll click on Save. I'll go into my flash drive. And I'll go ahead and save that. That saves everything. I can then go back to my Illustrator file. I'll create a new layer. Make that go away. Let me create a new layer. This will be my clay. I want it to be below everything else, though, so we'll put it at the bottom here. Then I can go to File and then Place. And I can drop in that clay render right here. Remember, I am going to have to adjust the size a bit. So let's hold down Shift. Let's adjust that size over. And there it is, matching up with my building. This ends up looking way too dark to me. So I may take it, go to Properties, and I might adjust the opacity of this. So there's my opacity adjustment. I might need to make it lighter so that all I'm really seeing is the line drawing with a little bit of the shadow behind. And again, that's a personal preference for what you want to see. You may also decide that certain elements of this need to be filled in, and you want those to appear darker. If that is the case, I suggest using both your hidden and visible layers, copies of both. So let me go ahead and select them both, and I'll say Duplicate Selection. Oh, come on. Duplicate visible. Oh, it's not going to let me do it. OK, well, I'll have to do it the old-fashioned way then. Let me select both sets of lines. There it is. And once I've done that, I'll go to Object, Live Paint, Make. That will make a live paint group of these objects. I can then use the Live Paint Bucket tool, which is available underneath the Shape Builder tool, or you can press K. And I can actually choose to fill in certain shapes. So I could fill in where the walls are. Whoops. Make sure that it is black. And actually, to make this easier, I'm going to fill in with a different color, and then I'll move layers afterward. So these are just filling in the pieces of the building that are solid. So I can go through, and I could say, OK, that, and that, and that. So I'm not doing the most careful job, but I spent a little bit more time going through this. And maybe ultimately I should have only included the visible layers instead of the hidden layers too. And so I'm not going to make you watch and go through all of the stairs, but I would keep going and keep selecting everything that's being cut through like that. Once I'm done, I'll go back to Properties here, and I can go to my Edit and Live Paint Expand. That breaks apart the shapes that I just created. I can use the direct select tool to select one of the reds and then say select same fill color. It's going to select all of the reds, and then I can move them onto their own layer here. Create a new layer for fill. Move them underneath everything else, and then I can change the fill color to be black, for example. Let me press Control-0 to zoom out, and you can start to see this becoming its own drawing. I still have a lot of hidden lines that are in here that I haven't changed just yet. So let me go ahead and select same stroke color. That'll select all of the hidden lines. And I'll change that color to maybe a gray. I'll also change the property so that those are small, 0.25. And I might change them to be dashed. So let me go ahead and go to Window, Stroke, show the options. And I could say that I wanted it dashed at 2 by 2, for example. And those are going to start to show up there as well as you zoom in. So anyway, the point is that I can go through and I can fill in my section so that it starts to read nicely as a section. I have my clay rendering, which provides some of my shadows underneath. You guys on the projector probably aren't seeing that as well as I am, in which case maybe I should adjust the opacity so that it's a little bit stronger so you can see it. There it is. So we're getting the rendering of what's happening inside, but we're getting the line drawing on top. There are still lines in here, purple and blue, that I haven't changed colors yet. I will continue to work on it and get that all touched up so you can see the final version at the end. But this is the process of creating a section. It's very, very similar to the plan. It's just the orientation that's a little bit different. Okay? So this is the last of the 3. You're going to pick 2 of them. So elevation, plan, and section, you pick 2. You're going to turn in 2 of those as part of your final for this class. Are there any questions before I turn you loose? Remember, in terms of today, if you work on something different, if you work on your renderings, whatever it is that you work on, just post something at the end under 228 so that I can give you credit for it. I don't have current grade sheets for you guys yet. You will have them on Wednesday so you can see where everything is and what you're missing, etc. But I apologize, I haven't gotten through everything just yet. So you will have those on Wednesday, and if you have any questions, we can go over those as well. So with that, I'll turn you guys loose so you can finish up and get ready for the end, 1 week.